Let's start with something most psychologists call the outsider phenomenon. And no, this isn't just introversion. It's not shyness. It's not even social anxiety, though those things can overlap. With it, the outsider phenomenon is a deeply specific psychological experience. It's the persistent bone-level sense that you are somehow fundamentally different from the people around you, not in a superior way, not in a broken way, but in a way that makes genuine belonging feel almost structurally impossible. People who experience this tend to share a particular set of patterns. They can perform normalcy. They can laugh at the right moments, nod along with conversations, say the things that are expected. From the outside, they look fine. They look like they're participating, but internally, there's a constant low hum of distance, like they're watching the scene from slightly outside their own body. They remember moments of disconnection from very early childhood, not dramatic moments, subtle ones. The feeling at a birthday party that everyone else knew a social script they were never given. The confusion at why certain things mattered so much to their peers when those same things felt hollow or obvious. They tend to think in questions that others don't. Not just what is happening, but why. Not just what do people want, but what are they really feeling underneath. Not just what's the rule, but why does this rule exist, and does it actually make sense? And here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. These people don't just notice the world differently, they process it differently. At a neurological level, their brains are filtering and interpreting experience through a lens that is simply more activated, more sensitive, and often more complex than the people immediately around them. Researchers have found that individuals who consistently feel different from their social environments tend to score significantly higher in a personality dimension called openness, to experience one of the big 5 personality traits. They also tend to have heightened interoceptive awareness, meaning they are more tuned into their own internal emotional states, which can make external social environments feel loud, shallow, or emotionally confusing. Here's the cliffhanger. All of this, it's only the surface. Because what actually drives the feeling of being different isn't just your personality. To raise something deeper going on. Something that started long before you came it. Well, to name. Most people assume that feeling different is a social problem. They think, I just haven't found my people yet. Or I need to work on my social skills. Or maybe I'm just in the wrong city, the wrong job, the wrong circles. And so they try harder. They show up to more events. They mirror other people's energy. They practice small talk. They read books about charisma. 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 And for a little while, it works sort of. But then always the glass wall comes back. The distance returns. And the exhaustion that follows isn't physical. It's deeper. It's the exhaustion of having performed someone you're not. Again, for people who would never have loved the real version anyway. Hear us. What? Most people never realize feeling chronically different is not primarily a social problem. It's a developmental one. Psychologists who study identity formation, particularly researchers like Erik Erikson and more recently scholars in the field of existential psychology, have found that a significant number of adults who feel perpetually different from their peers experienced a particular kind of developmental mismatch during childhood. What does that read? It means that as a child, your internal world, your sensitivities, your curiosity, your depth of feeling, your way of processing the world was simply not reflected back to you by your environment. You might have grown up in a home where emotional depth wasn't discussed, where thinking too much was treated as a problem, where conformity was rewarded and difference was either ignored or quietly punished. Or you might have grown up in a community where your values, your interests, or your way of seeing the world were simply alien to everyone around you. Not because anyone was cruel. Just because there was a fundamental incompatibility between who you were and what the way environment was designed to nurture. And children who experience this don't conclude my environment doesn't fit me. That's a conclusion adults make. Children conclude, I don't fit. Something about me is wrong. Something about me needs to be fixed. That conclusion, formed at age 6 or 8 or 11, becomes a lens. And many adults are still looking at the world through that exact lens. 30 years later, still waiting to be found out, still performing the version of themselves that was once required for survival, still carrying a wound they don't even remember receiving. But now comes the part that changes everything. Because there's something beneath even that, psychological truth about why certain people are built this way in the first place. And it might be the most important thing you hear today. Here is what the research actually says about people who feel different. They are not broken. They are not damaged. They are not failed versions of normal. They are, in a very specific psychological sense, more awake. A landmark study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who score high on measures of psychological complexity, meaning they hold more nuanced, multi-layered views of themselves and the world, consistently report feeling more alienated from mainstream social environments. But, and this is critical, these same individuals also report higher levels of meaning, deeper relationships, when they do find connection, and greater long-term life satisfaction compared to those who conform more easily. Think about what that actually means. The very thing that makes belonging feel difficult is the same thing that makes real belonging transformative when it finally happens. The person who has never felt understood craves understanding more deeply, gives it more generously, and recognizes it more profoundly. When it finally arrives, Therese. More. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people, a neurological trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population, reveals that sensory and emotional sensitivity is literally hardwired into certain nervous systems. These individuals process stimuli more deeply. They notice subtleties others miss. They feel things longer and more intensely, and in a culture that prizes speed, toughness, and emotional efficiency, these people feel like they landed on the wrong planet. But here's the aha moment. That trait, the same one that makes movie theaters too loud, parties too draining, and small talk feel like sandpaper, is also the source of their most extraordinary capacities, their creativity, their empathy, their ability to read a room, sense what's unspoken, and feel literature, music, and art at a leveler's molecular level. The wound and the gift are the same thing, wearing different clothes depending on the day. And there is one more discovery, perhaps the most stunning one. Researchers studying social identity theory have found that people who experience chronic outsider status often develop something rare, a capacity for what's called self-transcendence. Because they were never fully absorbed into any single group identity, they retain an unusual degree of psychological freedom. They question inherited beliefs. They are less susceptible to groupthink. They carry a kind of inner authority that conformers never develop, because conformers never had to find it. The person who never fully belonged to any tribe becomes capable of something most people never achieve, choosing who they are rather than inheriting it. Let's go deeper. Because understanding the psychology is one thing, but sitting with the feeling, the actual lived experience of being this kind of person is another thing entirely. Therese, a particular kind of loneliness that people like this carry. And it's important to name it correctly, because naming it is the first step to releasing it. It's not the loneliness of being unloved. Many of these people are loved deeply by family, by friends who see fragments of them, It's not the loneliness of isolation. Many of them are surrounded by people constantly. It's the loneliness of being unseen. The specific ache of sitting in a room full of people and knowing, not fearing, not suspecting, but knowing that not a single person in that room is accessing the real version of you. That you are presenting a curated, simplified edition of yourself, because the full version would be too much, too strange, too hard to explain. Psychologists call this existential loneliness, and it's remarkably distinct from social loneliness. Social loneliness is cured by company. Existential loneliness is not you. Can be at a party surrounded by laughter and feel it like a quiet earthquake under your feet and hairs. What makes it so quietly devastating? People who carry this kind of loneliness often become extraordinarily good at hiding it. They become skilled translators, people who can speak the language of any room they enter, who know how to make others comfortable, who intuitively understand social dynamics. But the translation is always one direction. They translate themselves outward. Almost no one translates inward, toward them. And over time, the gap between the performed self and the actual self can grow so wide that the person begins to lose track of which one is real. They become strangers to themselves. They can tell you exactly what everyone else needs, exactly how others feel, exactly what the room requires, but they cannot tell you, with any confidence, what they need, what they feel, what the room looks like for them, when no one is a. This is what psychologists call chronic self-alienation, and it's one of the most underdiagnosed sources of low-grade depression, relentless anxiety, and the persistent sense that something important is missing, even when by every external measure, life looks fine. But there is a way through, and it doesn't look like what most people expect. Here is the truth no one tells. You have spent most of your life trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. You were not built wrong. You were not placed in the wrong body, born into the wrong era, or cursed with some invisible deficiency. You were built with a particular set of qualities: sensitivity, depth, complexity, awareness, and you were placed early in life in an environment that did not have the tools to hold those qualities properly. That's not your fault. It's not your family's fault. It's not the world's fault. It's simply a mismatch, a developmental gap that left a wound that got covered up so well you eventually forgot it was there. But here's what healing actually looks like for people like you. It is not about becoming more normal. It is not about finally cracking the social code, mastering small talk, or learning to care less. Every attempt to solve the problem by shrinking yourself has already proven it doesn't work. You already know this. Healing for the person who has always felt different is about a radical act of self-recognition. It is about standing in front of not the mirror on the wall, but the mirror of your own honest self-awareness, and saying, "This is who I am, not who I was told to be, not who was convenient for others, not who was safe. This is actually who I am." It is about understanding that your depth is not a burden to be managed. It is the most valuable thing about you, that your sensitivity is not a weakness to be trained away. It is the source of every meaningful thing you have ever made, felt, or understood. It is about finding the one or two human beings, not 20, not a crowd, just one or two, who can actually hold the full version of you, who don't need you to translate, who speak your language without being taught. Those people exist. You haven't found them yet, because you've been spending your energy trying to fit into rooms they're not in. And it is about understanding finally, completely, at the cellular level, that the glass wall you felt your whole life is not a sign of your inadequacy. It is a sign of your depth. The wall is not between you and belonging. The wall is between you and shallow belonging, between you and the kind of connection that doesn't actually satisfy, between you and a version of life that would have required you to disappear in order to maintain it. You were never meant for that life. You were always meant for something realer, something quieter and stranger and more luminous. And here is the most important thing you will hear today. The people who changed the world, the artists, the thinkers, the healers, the ones who said something true when everyone else was comfortable saying nothing. They were almost never the people who fit in easily. They were the ones who felt the glass wall, who knew the loneliness, who carried the weight of being too much and not enough simultaneously, and who eventually stopped trying to fit and started building something instead. You are not broken. You are early, and the life that actually fits you, the connections, the purpose, the deep aching sense of finally being home is not behind you. It's still ahead, and it has been waiting with remarkable patience for you to stop apologizing for who you are.